Hi guys, for my final synthesis assignment, I wanted to discuss how media compares to how it did about 10 years ago. Um, I would definitely say, from what I can remember, being younger and growing up and watching TV shows, I can definitely say that media and representation within the media has definitely improved. Um, while there is still some feeding into stereotypes, I think that the main point of including those is to try and incorporate more representation. Um, Unfortunately, it's really hard to incorporate groups of minorities and just identity minorities within the media without including these generalized stereotypes that society has about these groups of people. Um, I would also say that movies that have bad representation, like we watched the movie Baywatch, I definitely think that movies like that are so extremely important in today's society still and within just media studies in general. While it does have a bad representation of any minorities, like Baywatch had a bad representation of female figures and there was a lack of representation of race, I would definitely say that these movies are still important to include. Um, and with that, I think it's important that we as media consumers definitely look at those kinds of movies and say that's wrong, and we need to learn how to go against that. So while we are improving in the media today, I definitely still think that there are some exceptions, and there's still some people out there who believe that how media used to be in past has needs to be the way it is. Like, it needs to continue to be that way. But I definitely think that there's a larger population of people who are going against that idea, and they're saying, no, that's not right, and we need to start incorporating more representation into the media. This idea definitely plays into the pitch assignments that we had to do for this class. So personally, I thought pitch one wasn't too hard. It was pretty easy to choose a form of media that had decent representation but still could use some work. I definitely thought that was easier than pitch two simply because I was not coming up with my own idea. I was getting to pick apart and analyze another idea that someone had already come up with. Pitch two was a little bit different. I definitely met some struggles along the way while doing that assignment. I even personally found myself feeding into those stereotypes when trying to come up with an overall storyline. I thought it was really hard to not include those when you're trying to get a point across as to why those stereotypes are bad. I also am guilty of trying to make the main character right off the bat not white and not a white male specifically, but I found that really hard to do because just with a lot of the film that I watched and a lot of the film that was running through my mind while making this project is mostly based off of a white male as the main character, a white straight male, might I add. But yeah, like I said, pitch two definitely was hard, and it definitely made me realize that creating forms of media that don't feed into the stereotypes but still portray an accurate representation of minorities and groups of minorities is definitely harder than looking at someone else's and just picking it apart for what they did wrong. Before this class, I would definitely say that I had a good background of media. I took a lot of like gender, sexuality classes before this. But this one was definitely different than the rest of them. The rest of them mainly focused on like what we do as a society and not so much as why we do what we do in society. So I feel like this media class definitely brought to light why we tend to follow the pathways that we do, or why we tend to use the norms and go with the norms that we do. I knew media was very influential, but I didn't understand how and why it was influential to us and what it could actually do to societal issues. And this class has definitely opened my eyes to that and has made me realize that media is definitely in control of a lot of those things within society. But not only through the plot lines and not only through like the main characters of the movies and the shows, I definitely, when we were talking about the cinematography of things, through the stage work, the camera work, these definitely portray minorities and groups of people who are viewed less within that film or form of media, the camera work is very important, and I think that was super interesting, and a very good thing that I picked up on within this class, because it's not only just what someone says within a film or how someone looks in a film, but it can definitely just be the way that the camera is worked, and how the angles can make it appear as though one's looking down on someone else, or that one person is less than another. So I definitely think that taking the media perspective within this class rather than just the societal perspective, as my other past classes have, was definitely super relevant in learning how media actually affects society as a whole. My experience, I would say, has definitely changed after this class. I'm definitely more analytical now. Watching movies, I am guilty of watching movies with my roommates and being like, oh, that's wrong. Or, oh, they're just saying that because this person has this identity. I I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's something we need, and I think that's what a lot of future audiences are going to have to do if we want to continue to make this movement within media studies. I definitely am also caught myself looking beyond what the characters are saying and doing, like how they're portrayed, like their personality, just the way that they hold themselves within a group setting, or the way they are told to walk, or the way they are told to dress. Definitely picked up on those kinds of things beyond the general plot line of what is actually being told to the audience. Along with this, though, like I said previously, I still believe that consuming all forms of media, bad representation or not, is important. It's definitely something that needs to be done in order to completely get rid of the bad representation within media, because we need to address and acknowledge what is being bad, or what is bad, and what is still being done that is bad. And the only way to do that is to have exposure to that, and when we do see that, to recognize that that's wrong and that we need to go against those ways. Many of the assignments stood out to me, but I think the ones that stood out to me the most were definitely the weekly discussions and the weekly discussion board posts that we had to make. I think that the amount of posts that we had to make definitely allowed us to have a lot of exposure to many different forms of media, and many different styles of media. I thought the discussion was a very, very important part of this class. It was definitely essential, because it was important to hear what other people had to say about the media that we consumed. And it also allowed for us to be in a more personal setting. Being online can definitely be hard because you don't necessarily know who you're talking to when you're writing those discussion posts. So I think that seeing a face and putting a face to an idea that was had definitely just makes it more human and makes it more relatable, and makes it so those conversations are easily had if there is a disagreement, or if there is another idea that you want to add. So I definitely think that the discussions, I would say, made the class what it is. I definitely got the most, I think, out of the discussions, and just hearing ideas from people that you didn't even think about yourself. Definitely opens your mind and exposes you to more ideas that you wouldn't have even noticed if you were just analyzing it by yourself. In the future, after this class, I definitely, like, another question that I would definitely have to ask is, how do we increase representation to a large audience, to an influential audience, without incorporating the general stereotypes? So that is definitely something that I would be interested in looking into more. I hope to continue to take classes similar to this within the honors program. So I definitely would want to look into that question and say, okay, we recognize that this is a bad thing, but how do we go against that now? Along with this, I've learned many concepts from this class that I can just put towards life in general. I learned that the lack of representation can really affect the minds and the goals of the minority groups being underrepresented. It definitely shines within the workplace, the school place, advertisement settings, such as who's wearing what clothing on billboards, and who's using what materials within TV commercials, who is being represented within famous sports that everybody watches. I definitely would say that this class gave that general idea to me that not only is it bad to have a lack of representation within the media, it's bad to have a lack of representation everywhere. And media, unfortunately, is the most consumed product within our society. So I think that's the easiest way to get through to the people, that representation is very valid in validating a person's life and what they believe of themselves. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this class, and I definitely would recommend it to anybody else looking for an interesting but yet kind of low-key class to take for an honors credit. So thank you.